Struggling to choose a PhD topic? It's not about being completely unique. It's about finding your angle. Are you stuck trying to pick a PhD topic, feeling like every idea has been done before? Don't panic. The secret is, you don't need a one-in-a-million completely original idea. It's about taking an existing topic and finding your unique angle on it. In this video, I'll show you how to turn that "everything's been studied" fear into "aha, here's my approach." Introduction. You're not alone in the topic struggle. Choosing a PhD topic can feel overwhelming. Maybe you've brainstormed ideas, only to discover papers already published on them. You might worry, is my topic original enough? Here's some good news. Virtually all PhD research builds on existing work. The trick is to refine and personalize an idea, not invent an entirely new field. In fact, experts say a great topic often builds on existing work while offering something original. So relax. Originality often comes from your perspective or context, not from being the first person ever to study a subject. Story time. Imagine a student named Sarah. She's passionate about urban farming and wants to research it for her PhD. A quick search shows tons of studies on urban farming abroad. Initially, Sarah feels discouraged. It seems done to death. But then she asks, "What's different about my city's situation?" She realizes no one has studied how local climate and culture affect urban farming in her region. That's her angle. It's a familiar topic with a fresh twist that matters locally. Sarah's story shows that you can take a well-known field and make it your own by finding a niche or gap. What to expect in this video? I'll walk you through 5 practical steps to go from a vague idea to a confident research direction. Identify existing research and gaps. Start with what's out there. Evaluate relevance and find your niche. Assess saturation and zero in on a gap. Frame local topics with global impact. Turn local gaps into global opportunities. Discuss with your supervisor. How to refine ideas through early conversations. Look beyond journals, tapping into theses, reports, and global experts. By the end, you'll know how to turn "hasn't this been done" into "here's how my take will add value." Step 1. How to identify existing research and gaps. The first step is to survey the landscape of research in your broad area of interest. This means doing a bit of detective work in academic databases to see what's already been studied, and more importantly, what hasn't. Reflect on your interests. Start by listing topics or questions you are excited about. Think about past research projects, courses, or problems in your field that fascinate you. For example, if you loved your master's thesis on renewable energy, ask yourself what unanswered questions remain from that work. Picking a topic you're genuinely interested in will keep you motivated during the long PhD journey. So, grab a pen and jot down a few broad ideas that light your fire. Use key databases. Next, take those ideas to the databases. A great starting point for any field is Google Scholar. It's free and searches across disciplines. Just enter keywords related to your interest. For instance, type "urban farming climate, your city," and see what comes up. If you're in healthcare, you might use PubMed for medical research. In engineering or computer science, check out IEEE Explore or ACM Digital Library. The idea is to cast a wide net. Each database has its focus. Google Scholar covers a bit of everything: articles, theses, etc., while others like PubMed or Scopus target specific fields. Don't worry about finding the perfect source right away. Just start gathering an overview of who's done what. Spending time on Google Scholar can quickly show you what research exists on your topic. In the image above, we see a Google Scholar search being filtered by date, which is a handy way to find the latest studies. Search smart. When you search, try a mix of broad and focused keywords. Start broad to get the big picture, e.g., urban farming. Then get specific, e.g., urban farming humid climate, or urban farming community gardens Kenya. Use quotation marks for exact phrases or Boolean operators and/or to refine results. For example, renewable energy and rural and Africa could be a targeted search. Also, take advantage of filters. In Google Scholar, you can restrict results to recent years to see the latest developments. Recent papers often mention current gaps since they'll say what's still unknown in the field. Scan and spot gaps. As you skim through results, look at titles and abstracts for hints of what was studied and where questions remain. Academic papers often end the introduction or literature review by saying, however, X has not been examined, or few studies have addressed Y. Those are gap clues. Another pro tip, jump to the discussion or conclusion sections. Researchers usually mention limitations of their study or suggest future research needs. If multiple papers on your topic all say further research is needed on Z, bingo, that's a gap you could fill. One guide calls this hunting for the FRIN, future research is needed section. Keep a notebook of any unanswered questions or understudied angles you come across. Leverage review papers. Try to find a recent review article or meta-analysis on your broad topic. Reviews are gold mines because they summarize what's known and often explicitly state research gap areas or recommendations for future work. For example, a literature review on urban farming might conclude with, research is largely focused on Western cities, whereas tropical urban environments remain understudied. That's a clue for a gap. If a review mentions your specific interest and says more research is needed, you've basically got an arrow pointing to a potential PhD topic. In this stage, you're gathering puzzle pieces. You want to map out the current state of knowledge in your area so you can see where a piece might be missing. Remember, every study you find is not a sign your idea is taken. It's groundwork you can build on. The literature is your friend here. By identifying what's been done, you'll inevitably see things that haven't been fully answered. Keep an open mind and enjoy exploring. You might even discover new subtopics that excite you more than your original idea. Step 2. Evaluating relevance. Find your niche in the field. 3 out 6 day. All right, so you've done some searching and reading. Now you might have a long list of papers and a sense of what's out there. The next step is to evaluate all this info and pinpoint your niche, the specific angle that you can tackle. This is about asking, where can I contribute something new or useful? Watch for saturation versus gaps. As you review the literature, notice which topics are crowded with research and which are underexplored. If you find dozens of papers all answering a similar question, that area might be saturated, at least globally. But don't write it off just yet. Sometimes a well-researched topic still has unaddressed angles. On the flip side, if you barely find any studies on your question, that could mean it's a genuine gap or that you need to tweak your search terms. Pro tip: try synonyms or related concepts to ensure you're not missing studies under a different name. Niche down. Originality often comes from narrowing the scope or changing the context. Ask yourself, can I focus on a specific aspect, population, or context that others haven't? For example, say the effect of social media on mental health is heavily studied overall, but perhaps teenagers in small towns are understudied compared to those in big cities. That narrower focus could be your niche. One hypothetical example. Researchers have thoroughly studied job satisfaction in the US and UK, but there's little data in East Asian contexts. This kind of contextual gap, like a specific country or demographic, is a prime opportunity. You'd be building on known theories of job satisfaction, but bringing in a fresh perspective by studying a new group. Ask the "so what" question. Evaluate each potential idea by its relevance and impact. Why does this gap matter, and to whom? If a topic is locally saturated, i.e., many studies in your country, but not globally or vice versa, think about significance. Sometimes a niche topic can be justified by its practical importance, even if it's not globally trendy. For instance, maybe no one has studied water management in your region's villages. Globally, it's a niche issue, but locally it could be crucial for policy, and the methods or findings might extend to similar regions elsewhere. A good PhD topic doesn't have to change the world single-handedly, but it should have a clear reason to exist. Make sure you can answer, what new knowledge or value will my study add? It could be academic value, like testing a theory in a new setting, or practical value, like informing local practitioners. Look for contradictions. If you noticed any conflicting results in the literature, that's often a juicy niche. For example, one study says, Method A works best for teaching math. Another says Method B is better. A gap exists in figuring out why they differ or which applies in a certain context. Your research could reconcile the conflict or test which finding holds true in a new scenario. Contradictory findings are basically the research world saying, "We're not sure yet. Help." Leverage your strengths and resources. Also consider your own strengths and what resources you have. Maybe you have access to a unique dataset, community, or lab equipment. Aligning your topic with these can carve out a niche that you are especially positioned to tackle. For instance, if you're working in a lab with a new microscope technology, you could apply it to an old research question in a novel way. Voila, a niche by method. Similarly, think about your supervisor's expertise. More on that soon. If they're an expert in a certain theory or method, you might narrow your topic to leverage that guidance. Choosing a niche that aligns with your skills and mentor's knowledge is strategic and can make your research more robust. By the end of this step, you want to identify a specific gap that feels just right. Not so broad that it's overwhelming, but not so narrow that it's trivial. A useful guideline from one doctoral resource. A good PhD topic often looks at a familiar problem in a new way, such as a new population, a new method, or a fresh theoretical lens. In other words, you're still standing on the shoulders of giants, but maybe you're looking in a different direction. This is where your originality truly comes from. Step 3. Finding your PhD topic. Why local gaps are global opportunities. 6-9 Rise. Now, let's talk about one of the coolest tricks in choosing a topic. Turning a local gap into a question of global significance. Just because your research focuses on a local or specific context doesn't mean it's not important elsewhere. In fact, highlighting the broader implications of a local study can make your project exciting to international audiences and funders. Think local to global. Ask yourself, what's missing right here, in my community or region? Often, those local gaps can reflect issues seen elsewhere or provide lessons for the wider world. For example, imagine you notice a disease affecting fish in a local lake that hasn't been studied. That's a local research gap. But why stop there? That local issue could inform global biodiversity and conservation efforts if similar ecosystems around the world face the same threat. By researching it, you might discover principles that apply to other lakes or contribute to general ecological knowledge. The key is to frame your local problem in a way that others can learn from it. As one advisor put it, treat local gaps as global lessons. You're extracting universal insights from a specific situation. Align with big themes. A practical way to boost global relevance is to link your topic to broader themes or priorities. Think of things like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, or national research agendas. For instance, if your local study is about improving a rural school's education outcomes, tie it to SDG 4, quality education, or show how it addresses education inequality, a worldwide concern. Funders and evaluators often love to see this connection. It signals that while you're solving a local puzzle, you're also contributing to a bigger picture. Let's say you're studying a regional public health issue, maybe a rise in diabetes in your community. You can highlight how understanding this local trend could help other regions with similar demographics, or feed into a national health policy, essentially showing that local research feeds global knowledge. Highlight unique contexts. Your local context might offer a natural experiment or unique conditions that big global studies overlook. Take an example. Plenty of research exists on renewable energy adoption in wealthy countries, but what about a small developing nation or a remote community? By focusing locally, you might reveal barriers or innovations that large-scale studies miss. Those findings could guide projects in other places with similar constraints. One academic tip is to look at populations or settings that differ from those in existing research. If most studies were in urban settings, consider rural. If mostly on adults, consider youth. If on English-speaking participants, consider non-English contexts. This way, you contribute by broadening the scope of understanding. A Walden University guide notes that an academically relevant topic might simply be one that looks at a population that differs from those studied in existing research. See? It doesn't have to be brand new, just new to this context. Example: framing local to global. Let's bring this to life with a scenario. Suppose you're in a country where coastal erosion is a serious local problem, but most published research on erosion control is from temperate countries with different climates. Your angle: study an erosion prevention method on your tropical coastline. Locally, this helps your communities. Globally, you're contributing to climate adaptation knowledge for all tropical coastal regions. Emphasize those ripple effects. What we learn here could help protect other coasts globally. Or maybe your PhD is on a local history or culture topic. You could frame it as a case study that challenges or enriches an existing theory in anthropology or sociology that has mostly been based on Western examples. Essentially, always ask, how does my local study connect to broader issues? And make that connection clear in your proposal. Not only does this make your work more compelling, but it shows you're thinking like a seasoned researcher who cares about impact beyond the lab or library. Keep it real. While linking to global themes, be careful not to stretch the relevance too far. Stay honest about what your research can and can't claim. It's okay that your PhD won't save the whole world. None ever does. The goal is to position it so that people see the value both locally and conceptually. Even if it's a niche topic, you can say something like, "This study provides insight into X in your country, offering a comparative perspective to studies from other countries and contributing to a more global understanding of the issue." That's a powerful statement. In summary, don't underestimate your local or niche idea. What's missing in your backyard could be the key to answering questions on the global stage. By framing your research gap as part of a larger narrative, you elevate your work from interesting to important. Remember, finding your angle often means literally focusing on your place, your community, or your unique situation. and then shining a light on why that matters to everyone else. Step 4. Discussing preliminary findings with your supervisor. 9 Troscow 11 Shiguao. You've identified a promising gap and shaped a potential research angle. Awesome. Now, don't go solo from here. One of the smartest moves early on is to loop in your supervisor, or a potential supervisor if you're still choosing one. Think of this as a reality check and refining session. Your advisor has likely seen many students struggle with topics and can provide invaluable feedback to set you on the right path. Prepare for the conversation. Before meeting your supervisor, organize your thoughts. You don't need a fully fleshed out proposal yet, but come with a summary of your idea and what you found in your initial search. For example, prepare a one-page briefing. Topic X: what's known, what's missing, why it matters, and how I might tackle it. Showing that you've done your homework impresses professors. It signals that you're proactive and serious. Include a short list of key studies you found and highlight the gap you're aiming to fill, e.g., several studies did A and B, but none looked at C in your context, which is where I'd like to contribute. Ask for feedback. In the meeting, be open and coachable. Share your excitement for the topic, but also any uncertainties. Good supervisors will appreciate that you're coming to them at this formative stage. You might say, I found that this area hasn't been studied much in our region. Do you think this is a strong direction? And, are there particular angles or questions within this topic you find more promising? Don't be afraid to ask if they know of any work you missed. Professors have a mental library of research and might point you to a crucial paper or a researcher to contact. Remember, you're not expected to have all the answers now. This is a brainstorming and guidance session. Refine your question. Together, supervisors can help narrow a broad idea into a doable research question. Maybe your initial gap is still too broad. They might help you slice it into a specific question that fits a PhD's scope. For example, you propose studying climate impact on farming techniques in 3 countries. Your supervisor, knowing the depth needed, might suggest focusing on just one country or a comparative study of 2 as a compromise. They might also help align the topic with methodology. If they're experienced in qualitative research and your idea sounds very quantitative, they could advise on adjusting the approach, or vice versa. This conversation ensures your topic is feasible, manageable in time and resources, and that it fits your program's expectations. One tip from academic forums: explicitly ask your supervisor, how promising do you find this topic? And, do you think it's original enough for a PhD? Their reaction can be telling. If they get excited, you're on the right track. If they look concerned, be ready to pivot or adjust based on their suggestions. Discuss alignment with expertise. If you haven't chosen a supervisor yet, this step can also help you identify the right person. Ideally, you want a supervisor whose interests or expertise overlap with your topic. During initial chats, mention how your idea connects to their work. For instance, I noticed you've published on sustainable agriculture. My idea about urban farming builds on that concept. Most professors will be more enthusiastic and helpful if your project intersects with what they know well. If your current supervisor isn't deeply familiar with the niche you chose, they might suggest a co-supervisor or bring in another faculty member for additional input. That's a good thing. It means they're ensuring you have the right support. Iterate and refine. It's rare to walk out of the first meeting with a fully approved topic. Think of it as an iterative process. Your supervisor might say, Idea A is too broad, but idea B within that could work. Or, I like this angle. Have you considered incorporating theory Z to strengthen it? Take their feedback and do another round of literature search if needed. They might drop names of theories, methods, or prior studies. Go look those up. This back and forth will hone your topic. Remember the earlier step about seeing what's feasible. Supervisors know the pitfalls, like if an idea would require impossible data collection, and can steer you away from dead ends early. It's much better to adapt now than to realize a year in that your project isn't workable. Ultimately, your supervisor is a partner in shaping your research. Use their experience. They've guided other students through finding the right-sized gap. And beyond just the topic, discussing early also helps you gauge how supportive and interested they are, which is important for your working relationship. So don't hold back. Share your excitement, share your preliminary findings, and be ready to listen and tweak. Your passion plus their experience is a winning combo for nailing that topic. Step 5. Resources beyond databases. Think outside the journal. By now, you've scoured academic journals and gotten faculty input, which is fantastic. But don't stop there. There's a whole world of additional resources that can enrich your understanding and give you an edge in formulating your PhD topic. Let's explore a few. Institutional repositories and theses. Have you checked your university's library or online repository for past theses and dissertations? This is a treasure trove often overlooked. Universities usually archive PhD and master's theses. Reading a few recent ones in your field can reveal what topics have been done locally and how those authors justified their gaps. Perhaps a student 5 years ago identified a research gap but didn't fully explore it. You could pick up that baton. Also, theses often have extensive literature reviews that might point you to sources you hadn't found. It's a great way to see how a broad idea was narrowed down in practice. If you find a thesis somewhat related to your idea, pay attention to their recommendations for future research section. They might literally spell out a gap that you can address, with the benefit that it's vetted by a completed PhD work. Development and technical reports. Not all knowledge lives in journal articles. For certain fields, especially in social sciences, public health, environmental studies, etc., organizations produce reports that highlight pressing issues and research needs. Think of reports by the World Bank, United Nations, WHO, government agencies, or NGOs working in your area of interest. For example, a Ministry of Education report might reveal that student dropout rates in rural areas are rising and not well understood. That's essentially a research gap served on a platter from a real-world perspective. Or a technology roadmap from an industry group might say, further research is required to improve AI in agriculture. These sources can inspire topics that are highly relevant and often fundable, since they align with recognized needs. Plus, citing such reports in your proposal can strengthen the argument that your research is important beyond academia. Networking and reaching out. Remember, you're not limited to reading what's published. You can talk to people too. Reach out to researchers who are active in your area of interest. Platforms like ResearchGate or academic Twitter, or simply email, are great for this. Let's say you found a professor overseas who did a study very close to your idea. You can send a polite email introducing yourself and asking a couple of specific questions. For instance, Dear Prof X, I read your paper on urban farming in coastal cities. I'm exploring a PhD on a similar topic in my country. Do you know if anyone has looked at XYZ aspect? I'm trying to identify gaps for my research. You'd be surprised. Many researchers love to help and can point you to unpublished work, ongoing projects, or confirm that, yes, that angle is still open. They might even become collaborators later, or give advice on pitfalls. Academic networking sites and forums can also be useful. See what questions people are asking in your field. Active discussions can signal current challenges and undeveloped ideas. Attend conferences or webinars if possible. If you have the opportunity, join a conference, workshop, or even an online webinar related to your field. Early on, you don't need to present anything. You can just listen. Conferences are where the latest research is discussed, including work in progress. Listen for phrases like, "We're still figuring out," or questions from the audience like, "Have you looked at X?" Those can reveal hot-off-the-press gaps. Even virtual events or recorded talks can be insightful. And don't be shy to ask a question or approach a speaker, even via email after. It's another way to connect and learn what's not in the published papers yet. Use modern tools. There are new tools, often AI-powered, that can help visualize and find gaps. For example, Connected Papers and ResearchRabbit let you see networks of papers and might highlight clusters where few connections, meaning fewer studies, exist. Google Scholar alerts can notify you of new papers on your keywords. While these shouldn't replace your own critical reading, they can be handy aids to ensure you don't miss something and to spark ideas. If someone releases a fancy new dataset or methodology, these tools can clue you in, and you could be the first to apply it to your niche. Instant gap. In essence, think beyond the typical. The academic journey isn't just solitary library work. It's also about engaging with the community and resources around you. By tapping into theses, reports, and conversations with others, you'll gain a well-rounded perspective. You might discover a gap that isn't obvious just from journal articles. Plus, this extra effort can make your proposal stand out. You'll show that you understand the broader context of your field, not just the narrow slice in the journals. It demonstrates initiative, which review panels and supervisors appreciate. Picking a PhD topic is a journey of discovery, not a single eureka moment. And as we've seen, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Often, the best dissertation topics come from taking a solid, existing wheel and designing a new tread for it, one that suits the road you're on. Your PhD's originality will shine through in how you refine and personalize an idea. By asking a question no one has asked in quite the way you will, whether that's in a new location, with a new method, or from a new angle. Let's recap the path we've covered. Find out what's been done. You leverage tools like Google Scholar to map the research landscape and spot those precious gaps. Carve out your niche. You evaluated where you can add value, zeroing in on underexplored angles and contextual twists that make your study special. Connect the dots globally. You learned to frame your local or specific topic as part of a bigger picture, turning a local gap into a story of global significance. Team up with your supervisor. You open the dialogue early, getting feedback and ensuring your topic is on track and feasible. Remember, your supervisor is there to help shape your raw idea into a polished plan. Dig into diverse resources. You went beyond the usual suspects, mining theses, reports, and networks for insights that enriched your perspective and solidified your direction. By following these steps, you're not just randomly picking a topic. You're crafting a research question that is grounded in knowledge and boosted by your personal insight. How cool is that? Instead of stressing over